The American Visionary Art Museum is America's official national museum and education center for intuitive artistry. The American Visionary Museum explores and champions creative innovation and thought. Today, AVAM's director and founder Rebecca Alban Hofberger interviews famed Nobel laureate in physics John C. Mather.
What are you hoping? I understand that you are the lead scientist for the James Webb Telescope, and that's about to launch. And what are you really hoping you will understand from that launch and subsequent research and information sent back to Earth?
Well, you know, when we started the idea, people had in mind 4 big topics that we wanted to work on. What was the first thing that happened after the Big Bang? What were the first objects that formed out of that primordial material? How do the galaxies grow? Because they probably didn't come out right away looking like they are now. How are the stars born? We see them happening, but we can't really see inside the dusty clouds where they're being born today. And how do the planets work? And particularly, are there other planets like ours that potentially could hold life? So those are the 4 big questions. And what I really hope is that we'll get a big surprise out of our new observatory, because that's always happened every time we built a new great observatory. Something that nobody ever guessed was out there would happen. So it's a reminder that our imagination, no matter how feverish we might feel, is still limited, and we don't usually guess what nature has done.
Wow. Well, that leads me into, have you ever thought a particular theory absolutely ridiculous, but later found that it proved to have great merit?
I'm not really very speculative about things of that sort. Most of the theories that I've thought were true were because people already had proved they were true, pretty much. What I love, though, is the surprise that once in a while we get. So, as an example, when we built the Hubble Space Telescope, people were sure they'd be able to see the first galaxies being born out of the primordial stuff. And the first thing they found out was, no, you can't. They're too faint, they're too far away, and they're too red. So Hubble wouldn't be able to see them. So pretty soon a committee was formed to say, well, please build us another bigger, better telescope that could see that happening. So that was a lovely surprise. And another more recent one is we flew a little probe past Pluto. And what did we see when we got there? It's covered with all kinds of stuff. I imagine, oh, it's just a round rock like so many other things. Well, it's not a round rock. It's got ice. It's got mountains made out of water ice. It's got nitrogen snow lying in snowbanks all over the surface. So who'd have guessed any of that? Well, hardly anybody even imagined that they should think about it. So we got wonderful surprises, and so it's amazing what you can find out if you look.
Exactly. We have very fortunate to have the major works by Ingo Swann, who did a lot of remote viewing speculation about space and turned out to be quite accurate. But we have his masterpieces of his visions of the cosmos as well. So I hope you will come in.
I would love to see them. Yes.
I wanted to ask you, could you define dark matter in very plain language and why we should have any interest in it?
Oh, dark matter is something astronomers can deduce it must exist. It seems to have gravity. It seems to be responsible for our existence in a very important way. There's a lot of it out there, and it's got the gravity that it took to start the galaxies growing soon after the Big Bang. So it's important, and we don't know what it is. Cannot define it. I can tell you that it is, we call it dark, but we should just really call it transparent, because as far as we can tell, it just doesn't absorb or emit light. It has gravity, and that's how we know it's there. It even changes the way that galaxies spin. Ordinarily, you'd think, well, galaxies should follow Kepler's laws, and stars should go around the middle and like that. Well, they don't. At least if you try to figure that out, galaxies weigh a lot more than they should. You can't see all the stuff. So that's called dark matter, and we think that's out there. We've never seen a single particle of it in the laboratory yet that we've been able to recognize. So it'll be a big mystery, maybe forever. Maybe we'll find some in a laboratory next week.
I wanted to back up and try to figure out what kind of little kid you were and what was your entry into wonder. I wanted to know your relationship with nature.
Well, I grew up in the country, And you could walk outside and be among trees and grass and look up at the sky, and there were the stars up there. So unlike here in town, you can see stuff. And you could walk along the road, dirt road in the countryside, and pick up fossil rocks that had come from somewhere, and volcanic rocks that had come from somewhere else. So, you know, it doesn't take very much to get interested if you have time on your hands and you're just curious. So I also remember going to the museum, Natural History in New York, and seeing the planetarium show and the giant meteorite that came down from above, and thinking, well, how did all that happen? And at the time, nobody had any clue, that was early 50s, that we would ever have any ability to see better than we did then. We had the great Palomar telescope, which isn't very big anymore, and it was giving blurry images because the atmosphere is always dancing and making things shimmer out there. So we thought, well, we'll never beat that. But of course, then the space program happened. We have huge telescopes on the ground that beat the shimmering atmosphere, and we have telescopes in space like the Hubble Space Telescope and quite a few others, and then we will have the James Webb Space Telescope soon.
Of what magnitude is the James Webb in terms of clarity and what information it can bring out? Is there an estimate more than the Hubble?
Well, it's really hard to be properly comparative. It does different things mostly. They do overlap a little bit, but we'd like to say it's 100 times more powerful. That doesn't really convey the fact that there are some things one can do and the other can't. So the Webb telescope's designed to pick up infrared light. That is to say, the heat radiation that comes out from things that are too cool to send out visible light. So what we think it'll show us is, number one, the most distant galaxies that are going away from us so fast that we can't even see the light that they've given us, because it's stretched out by the expanding universe. So it's infrared, even though it started out as visible or ultraviolet. So that's number one. We'll be able to see inside those dusty clouds where stars are being born, because the infrared light will go around the dust grains while the visible light bounces off them. And the third thing is we see things that are cooler. We see things that are not warm enough to shine, so we'll see things like the temperature of the planet Earth. If they're out there, we can see them. So we actually already know of one star that's, we call it a star, but it's cooler than Earth. So I call it a chilly star. But there are a lot of things out there that are hidden from ordinary astronomy, but you can pick them up with infrared light.
I think Faraday said, nothing is too wonderful to be true.
Ah, you know? That's a wonderful thought. Nothing is too wonderful to be true.
Yeah. I would like to ask you another kind of thing along this. You're considered a leading pioneer in the understanding of the background nature of the cosmos and the probability of the Big Bang, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the next thing that you're focused on in your own, when you take a shower in the morning and you're thinking up your amazing thoughts? What are you wondering about most?
At the moment, I'm really curious, how are we going to see those little planets around other stars? So we've got lots of ideas and grand ambitions to build great equipment in space, because that seems to be needed. So I've been thinking about, well, how do you put up a blocker? You know, the biggest problem we have is not that the planets are so faint, although they really are, but that they're sitting right next to a really bright star that's like 10 billion times brighter than they are. So how are you going to see them? Well, you got to do something either with incredibly perfect optics in your telescope, or you put up a blocker, something that casts a shadow of the star, but you have to put it like 100,000 miles away, so that it's small enough so you can still see the little planet next to it while you're blocking out the light of the star. So that's something that's on my mind. We've got multiple ways we could try this, and that's on my mind because I like to invent things.
What are you proudest of that you have indeed invented?
Well, I think I'm really proud of the COBE satellite, the Cosmic Background Explorer satellite, which wasn't exactly my invention, because the distance between an idea and the finished product is immense. But it was my idea that we should go measure this cosmic microwave background radiation from the early universe. So back in 1974, I had finished my thesis up in Berkeley with a project that failed to measure this radiation at that time. It worked later. But anyway, I said, you know, we should try to propose this for a mission to outer space. And so I got together my friends and colleagues, and We wrote a proposal, and it eventually turned into a mission that flew. NASA built it, and went up and measured the Big Bang. And we found two basic things about the Big Bang. Number one, this story that we tell about the expanding universe is basically right. The color of this heat radiation is exactly as what the theory tells us it should be. And the second one is the early universe is a bit lumpy. Hot and cold spots here and there, and we say that's really important because it explains how come we're here. According to that calculation, we say, well, if the early universe was just this amount lumpy, then gravity acting on the denser regions would stop the expansion of material and put it back in and turn into galaxies and stars. So it's just enough lumpy to make that happen. So that's pretty huge, important discovery. And when Stephen Hawking saw that map, he said that was the most important scientific discovery of the century, if not of all time. And so, okay, well, I didn't realize right away how important it was to so many people, but now I can tell you.
I came across something kind of enchanting where Einstein was asked in a pop kind of moment by someone, what do you think is the most important question that could be posed? And he said, is the universe a friendly place? For you, have you thought, do you think there could be intelligent life in this universe other than our meager efforts here on this planet?
Well, yeah, I've thought about it a lot ever since I was a little kid. I think a sort of fundamental observation, we live with a lot of other kinds of intelligent life right here. People don't like to think, well, crayfish are intelligent, or fish are intelligent, or rabbits are intelligent. We think, well, dolphins are intelligent, and chimpanzees are intelligent. Well, all these creatures are intelligent. There's different things that they can do, most of which we can't do. So we just don't know how to talk to them yet. I think, you know, the dog that you have in the house, if you have one, knows more about you than you know about it. So they know our emotions. They can figure this out. We like them around because they tend to trust us and they love us. But is the universe friendly? Well, it depends on what you mean. Are we actually going to find out? I think we'll find out that there's life elsewhere. Because we could measure the presence of oxygen on a planet's atmosphere way out there. So we can try out hundreds and thousands of planets we can examine with telescopes. Is there intelligent life out there that would have a civilization that we recognize like ours? It'll be hard to tell. On the other hand, people are building radio telescopes on the ground as we speak that they say will be able to pick up radar from another planet's airport. So if there were somebody out there that needed airplanes and radars and had them, we'd know. So it's unlikely they're transmitting us a signal on purpose, because even if they did, it'd be a really slow conversation. And you know, if they're say 20 light years away, then the quickest you can go is 20 years to send a message and 20 more years to get the answer back. So this is not exactly a quick conversation we might have. I think, on the other hand, it's also true that the universe is so large they're not going to bother us. We are not aware of any way to make quick space travel. So all those things you see in the science fiction movies is not happening. The closest we can imagine is that a robot, if we can make robotic intelligence, the robots can travel through space because they don't have to breathe. And so they could, but they still have to be patient. If we make them as intelligent as we are, they might say, well, I don't want to go. It's lonely out there. Why would I want to go to sleep for 100,000 years while I'm waiting to get to another planet? So I don't know what robot civilization will be like when it happens, but it could happen, I think.
I loved your appreciation for the kind of specific intelligence and awareness that dogs have. I wanted to say to you that in the current exhibition, The Great Mystery Show, we talk about the Max Planck Institute has identified 8 different kinds of intelligence, but they have said that the highest of all is intuitive intelligence, kind of the highway to understanding things. Have you ever had a hunch that just proved absolutely right?
Hunches that proved right. It's really hard to tell in retrospect. because as I understand it, the way the human memory works, and probably all creatures' memory works, is you recreate things after the fact. So always say, oh, that hunch worked out. Well, it must have been right the first time. So then you forget all the ones that didn't work out.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really hard to be sure you're telling the truth. I was asked the other day, well, what were you like as a child? And I say, I don't know. I didn't have a lab notebook with me. I didn't write anything down. I have no idea. I have to ask other people, what was I like?
That's right. I heard that Elon Musk's parents were just asked, and he would concentrate so fully as a small child that they took him in to see whether, because they would try to speak to him and he wasn't being rude, he just really could not hear them because he was so deep in his thought, and they took him for hearing test.
Huh?
Were you a kid like that?
I don't think quite that concentrated, but I certainly had a great interest in what I was thinking about and doing.
What were your favorite books as a little kid?
Oh, well, I remember there was Galileo and Darwin biographies. There's a book about George Washington Carver, the great researcher in peanuts. Then after I got into about 4th grade, I started reading all the science books I could get. Whatever there was in the library, I'd read it. And so I like some science fiction. I don't remember very many of them, but I remember in high school I came across Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy, which is a marvelous story. I don't remember the story now, but the one thing that sticks out for me is that there was a mathematician named Harry Seldon who thought he could work out the equations for psychohistory. So he's concluded from these equations that we needed to build a foundation to protect ourselves from the corrupt and overpowerful galactic government. And so he made this foundation, and of course it's a story. But as far as I know, there are no such laws of psychohistory, and no mathematician could solve those equations because there aren't any. But nevertheless, it was an interesting question.
What would be that one fact you wish that everybody understood about what we will call the heavens?
The heavens. Well, it's very big and very old and has time and place enough for even very unlikely things to happen. So it may be true that life occurs very rarely, but it has clearly happened at least once here. And so I think the suggestion is that even if it's very rare, there's more of life way out there, and more likely that there is living, breathing, intelligent life with civilization somewhere. We may not find it, but I think it's there.
So I just was wondering, you've been focused on the physicality and the scientific principles of the heavens, and has that in any way informed you about a more spiritual view of heaven?
Well, I've certainly been thinking about it for a long time. If somebody asks me, well, do you believe in God? I have to say, well, I don't know what the word means to you yet until we have a conversation. So it could be it's the Old Testament God, the God that's vengeful and demanding and punishing of people who commit bad things. Other people, God is love. Other people say, well, God is the force that started the expanding universe and it's hands off after that. Other people, it's an entity to whom you pray to ask for help. So I don't have an answer to any of those questions. None of them feel quite enough to me. But you know, we got 7 billion people plus here on Earth. I think we got 7 billion different views of God. And so I don't think any one of our particular views is more likely to be true than the rest, because they're really applying to so many different experiences. And people say the word, they're trying to tell you their experience, not having an abstract discussion. So it's about the feelings and the emotions and our connectedness with one another and with the universe more than, can God do this if he wants, or how many angels can be on the head of a pin that people used to argue about. So I think it's a wonderfully challenging question, and it's one that science doesn't really address directly. There have been some errors made where people said, well, my science says your religion is wrong, or vice versa. But I think there's been a lot of work in recent times, especially to say, you know, there's really separate territories. I know the Vatican has an observatory. The Vatican has Vatican astronomers, and the Church, Catholic Church, has been interested in astronomy and cosmology for centuries. It was the Pope Gregory that said we should have a new calendar, and how did he know? Because we studied astronomy. So anyway, there's been a strong connection for a very long time.
Has your work ever given you a great sense of awe?
I don't think my work gives me a great sense of awe. I just start with awe.
Oh, wonderful answer.
So, you know, when you look out and see what is the world like, it is astonishing in every way. Mm-hmm. Every little thing is so special and different, and yet there are some universal principles that seem to organize it, and we don't know how they work. As just an example of the awesome questions that are in front of us, how come I'm still me? I started off as a little tiny egg you can't even see, so they tell me. I'm told I was born. I wasn't, don't remember. They tell us that almost all our atoms have been replaced many times, but I still remember. I still look like me. People still think I have the same name that I've always had. So how does that work? Biologists have a name for it, but they don't really know how it works, most of it. So even the nature of identity, who am I, is something that's still very mysterious to us.
It's strange that you bring this up, because part of our Great Mystery Show is what do we mean when we say I? And I love that you went back and said, how can we discuss God, something that means so many different things to so many different people. But I think you give great words to those things that are beyond words. And again, just a wonderful gift to speak with you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to talk with you.